So I've just spent the past 6 months on a lean build, and to be honest, I don't look that much different. But in 10 weeks' time, I go on a beach holiday. And so I am having a very tiny little fat loss phase to trim back and get myself prepped for that beach trip. And it's also an opportunity for me to see how much of this build has actually worked. So this is the starting point, and each week over the course of this 10-week period, I am going to show a breakdown like this to show you the successes I've had, the challenges I've had, and what I then need to do to make sure that I stay on track to meet this goal. So week one, my average weight at this starting point is 79 kilograms. You've got two options at this point in time to work out your starting point for a fat loss phase. The first one is to work out what your total daily energy expenditure is, which is a calorie calculator essentially online. You put in your height, your current body weight, and then how active you are based on different metrics, and it will give you the criteria. And the end result will be a recommended calorie range, which will just be a generalized recommendation based on your certain profile. The other option you could have is if you already track your workouts and your calories, you could probably work out what your daily energy expenditure is at the moment. So I know from tracking that I burn 2,800 calories. So to maintain the weight that I am today, I would have to consume 2,800 calories every day to stay at 79 kilograms. But because I want to go into a fat loss phase, I need to eat less than 2,800 calories. And I want to aim for around about half a kilo of fat loss per week, which means half a kilo per week equates to around about a 500 calorie deficit per day. So immediately, the first thing I'm going to do is set myself a goal of 2,300 calories, and that is my starting point. Once you've set your total calorie goal, is you need to work out what your protein intake is going to be. Now, the general recommendation is around about the 2 grams per kilo of body weight mark. Now, because you're going into a fat loss phase, I'm actually going to 2.5 grams per kilo of body weight. Now, I must emphasize that is on the high side. I wouldn't go any higher than 2.5 grams per kilo in body weight. Now, the only reason why I'm going for 2.5 grams, and that will equate to around about 200 grams per day, is because I want to help make sure that I get muscle retention when I'm doing my weightlifting and the runs to aid for my recovery, but then also just because I want to use that 200 grams to help my satiety for that first week. Going from 2,800 to 2,300, I want to eat food that's going to leave me feeling fuller for longer. So it's going to be the fiber, the fruit, the vegetables, but also the protein. And that's the floor. So that's the non-negotiable. So assuming I'm on that 500 calorie deficit and I'm losing half a kilo a week, over the course of this 8 weeks, it's 10, but I'm leaving myself 2 as a backup, as a spare. I can expect myself to go down to between 74 to 75 kilograms. So that is the goal. So of those 2,300 calories that I'm going to be having, 200 grams is going to be protein, 268 grams is going to be carbs, and 52 grams is going to be fat. So that is a 35, 45, 20% split. So of those 2,300 calories, 35% is going to be protein, 45% is going to be carbs, and 20% is going to be fat. I wouldn't recommend going any lower than 20% fat. I personally prefer a low-fat diet because then it means I can prioritize my carbs a lot more, particularly around my training window, to fuel my performance. I wouldn't go lower than 20% fat because it is crucial for your joint health, for your hormone and your energy stability, and also just adhering to this plan. Steps. Over the past month, I have averaged 12,000 steps per day. That is my average up until this point. So I am going to stay the same, but the only difference I'm going to make is rather than it being an average, that is now going to be my floor. That is the bare minimum. So I am increasing my output slightly from going from an average to a daily minimum. I've already cut my input, my intake, so I'm not going to increase my output any more than what it already is. Because if you imagine fat loss and reverse diets for a similar matter, given that we're speaking about this sort of thing, they are of very similar nature in that they are balanced in scales. It is a very dangerous game to be cutting calories and increasing output at the same time. Never do both, because if you do both, you're making things harder from both perspectives, which means that adherence is much harder. Water, I currently have 3 liters, so I'm going to stick to that, 3 liters a day. That's a liter per 25 kilograms of body weight. If you were in a very highly active lifestyle, you did a lot of high rocks, a lot of running, you were active in your sessions, or if you just generally sweat a lot as an individual, I'll probably be increasing that a little bit more, maybe between 3 and 4 liters. Sleep, I'm going to be between 6 to 8 hours. Now, as a dad, that is somewhat out of my control. It's going to be a broken night's sleep with a lot of disruption from my daughter, but what I can do is look at the things that I can control to make sure that I get good quality sleep. So that means having a good wind down routine. It means making sure that I'm off the caffeine from around midday and just doing certain actions and steps that I can to make sure that the 6 to 8 hours I do have is really good quality ahead of my 5 a.m. training sessions at the gym. In terms of what I'm actually doing in terms of my training plan, 4-day split, upper lower, that stays the same with 1 to 2 runs per week. And those 1 to 2 runs, they're always low intensity, zone 2, just keeping a general cardio base. They're never anything high intensity. And most people, they mess this up straight away because they go in too hard, they drop the calories too low, they add loads of cardio, and then they try and rush the fat loss phase. And I'm not going to do that because you win by being able to execute the plan consistently for 10 weeks. That's how fat loss is won. And that's it. And that's how I'm going to start this fat loss phase for the 10-week period that I've given myself. Starting weight, 79 kilograms. The goal between 74 and 75 kilo. How I'm going to do that? Well, first off, I'm going to introduce a 500 calorie deficit, which is 2,300 calories. I'm going to make sure that my steps average now becomes the floor. So that's 12,000 steps per day. I'm going to maintain my water intake at 3 liters. I'm going to maintain that sleep target of 6 to 8 hours, ideally at the upper end as best I can. I'm going to continue my 4-day split and I'm going to continue running 1 to 2 times per week on low intensity. And that is it. The point of this first week is to set the foundations and set the baseline to see where that puts me before I adjust it further. So if you've been training for years and you're struggling to find that progress and you know that summer is just around the corner and you want to trim down a little bit for summer, follow these same principles because each and every week I'm going to give this breakdown. I'm going to cover the successes I've had, the challenges I've had, and what I'm going to do to change that to make sure that I stay on track for my holiday. If you want to learn these principles and use the same approach, then follow along. Because right now, week 1, it's just about doing things properly.